Meet Joe. He's an ordinary stick man living a completely ordinary life in a minimalist white world. He goes to his office job, drinks coffee, exercises on weekends, and tries his best to stay healthy. However, life can get incredibly stressful, and recently, Joe picked up a new habit to cope: smoking. From the outside, Joe looks exactly the same as before, a simple, clean outline. He thinks the cigarette helps him calm down after a long day and makes him look a bit cooler. But Joe has absolutely no idea about the chaotic, destructive, and violent process that is about to unfold underneath his blank white skin. Today, we are going to look past his simple lines and journey deep inside Joe's body to discover the terrifying truth of what smoking actually does to a stickman. To understand what's happening to Joe, we first need to look at what he is actually inhaling. When a cigarette burns, it doesn't just produce harmless vapor or simple smoke from burnt plants. Instead, it creates a highly complex, aggressive chemical weapon. With every single puff, Joe draws a chaotic cocktail of over 7,000 different chemical substances deep into his body. Among these thousands of elements, at least 69 are scientifically proven carcinogens, which means they directly cause cancer. We are talking about arsenic, which is used in rat poison, formaldehyde, used to preserve dead bodies, and butane, which is lighter fluid. Joe thinks he is just taking a break, but biologically, he is dropping a massive chemical bomb into his delicate respiratory system. Inside this toxic cloud, three major villains lead the attack on Joe's health: nicotine, tar, and carbon monoxide. Nicotine is the master manipulator. It doesn't physically scar the lungs, but it travels to Joe's brain in just 7 seconds, unlocking an artificial wave of pleasure that hooks him into a vicious cycle of addiction. The second villain is tar. This is a thick, sticky, dark residue that settles inside Joe's airways, turning his clean lungs into a dirty, clogged engine. The third villain is carbon monoxide, a deadly, odorless gas. Once inside the bloodstream, it acts like a bully, aggressively kicking vital oxygen molecules out of Joe's red blood cells and taking their place, leaving his entire body starving for fresh air. Let's zoom deep into Joe's respiratory tract to see the immediate damage. Naturally, Joe's airways are lined with millions of microscopic hair-like structures called cilia. Think of them as a massive team of tiny sweepers working non-stop to brush out dust, dirt, and natural mucus, keeping his lungs perfectly spotless. But the moment the hot, toxic cigarette smoke hits them, the story changes completely. The intense heat and chemical toxins instantly paralyze and destroy these delicate sweepers. With the cilia dead and gone, Joe's lungs lose their primary defense mechanism. All the daily dirt, heavy metals, and sticky black tar from his cigarettes begin to settle permanently at the bottom of his lungs, forming a thick, toxic layer of sludge. Because Joe's natural cleaning crew is paralyzed, his body has to find another way to clear out the toxic gunk building up in his chest. The only weapon left is a violent, heavy physical reaction: the infamous smoker's cough. Joe now wakes up every single morning coughing aggressively just to clear his airway, but the damage goes even deeper, reaching the alveoli, the tiny elastic air sacs where oxygen enters his blood. Smoking destroys the walls of these delicate bubbles, causing them to pop and lose their elasticity. This permanent destruction is called emphysema. Instead of hundreds of flexible oxygen balloons, Joe is left with stiff, useless spaces, meaning he will soon feel completely exhausted and out of breath just by walking up a flight of stairs. While Joe is struggling to breathe, his cardiovascular system is facing an absolute emergency. The moment nicotine enters his bloodstream, it triggers a sudden, massive surge of adrenaline. This chemical rush forces Joe's heart to beat significantly faster and causes his blood pressure to instantly skyrocket. His heart is no longer resting. It is forced to run a high-intensity marathon 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when Joe is just sitting completely still on his couch. This constant artificial pressure strains the heart muscle, wearing it out prematurely and dramatically, increasing the daily risk of a sudden, catastrophic failure in Joe's circulatory system. At the exact same time that the heart is pumping faster, the chemicals in the tobacco smoke are causing Joe's blood vessels to instantly narrow, harden, and lose their natural flexibility. Think of it like trying to force a thick liquid through a tiny plastic straw that someone is tightly pinching. To make matters worse, smoking makes Joe's blood much thicker and stickier, creating the perfect environment for dangerous blood clots to form. The toxic chemicals also damage the inner lining of his arteries, allowing fatty plaques to build up easily. If one of these sticky blood clots gets stuck in a narrowed artery leading directly to Joe's heart or brain, it will completely cut off the blood supply, resulting in a sudden heart attack or a stroke. With all this physical damage, why doesn't Joe just put down the cigarette? The answer lies inside the psychological prison of addiction. When Joe smokes, nicotine triggers a rapid release of dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. It creates a powerful temporary illusion of peace. However, Joe's brain quickly adapts to this constant chemical invasion by shutting down its own natural dopamine production and creating more receptors that crave nicotine. When Joe goes a few hours without a smoke, he enters a painful state of withdrawal. He becomes anxious, deeply stressed, and highly irritable. The cigarette is no longer giving him pleasure. He is simply smoking it just to feel normal again, trapped in a constant cycle of craving and relief. While the internal damage is hidden, smoking actively destroys Joe's outward appearance too. Because his blood vessels are narrowed, his skin is constantly starved of vital oxygen and nutrients. As a result, his skin loses its natural elasticity and begins to age prematurely, developing deep, permanent wrinkles around his eyes and mouth and turning a dull, pale gray. Joe's mouth also takes a direct, unfiltered hit. The heavy tar stains his white teeth a stubborn, ugly yellow. The toxic smoke dries out his mouth entirely, destroying healthy bacteria and causing chronic, severe bad breath. Over time, the constant chemical irritation weakens his gums, causing them to bleed, recede, and eventually lead to his teeth loosening and falling out. As time goes on, Joe notices that his everyday life is losing its flavor, literally. The toxic chemicals in the smoke physically numb and flatten the delicate taste buds on his tongue, while also damaging the sensitive olfactory nerves inside his nose. Joe can no longer fully enjoy the rich flavor of his favorite meals or appreciate the pleasant aroma of fresh morning coffee. His sensory world becomes completely muted and bland. But that's not all. Smoking is also burning a massive, permanent hole in his finances. Cigarettes are incredibly expensive. By funding his daily habit, Joe is literally setting thousands of dollars on fire every year, money that could have been spent on amazing vacations, fun hobbies, or a comfortable future. Now, let's look at the ultimate, most terrifying long-term threat Joe faces: cellular mutation. Every single time Joe takes a puff of smoke, powerful carcinogens travel deep into his body and launch a direct attack on his DNA. Your DNA is the essential instruction manual that tells your cells how to grow and divide safely. The toxic chemicals in cigarettes corrupt and break these instructions, completely turning off the cell's natural ability to stop multiplying. When this internal instruction manual is broken, mutated cells begin to divide uncontrollably, forming aggressive, malignant tumors. This is how smoking directly causes cancer, not just in the lungs, but also in the throat, mouth, esophagus, and stomach. Even if Joe is lucky enough to avoid cancer, heavy smoking leads to another horrific condition known as COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This is a permanent progressive disease that makes exhaling air almost impossible, effectively trapping stale, useless air inside Joe's chest. He will live in a constant state of silent suffocation, feeling like he is trying to breathe through a tiny straw for the rest of his life. To make things worse, Joe's immune system is completely crippled. His white blood cells are so exhausted from fighting the daily influx of tobacco toxins that they can no longer protect him from everyday germs. Simple colds quickly turn into dangerous infections, and his body's natural healing power vanishes. One definitive day, Joe looks at the burning cigarette in his hand, looks at his failing health, and decides he has finally had enough. He wants his life back. He throws away his pack and decides to quit forever. The first few days are an absolute nightmare filled with intense cravings, headaches, and irritation. But the moment he stops, an absolute biological miracle begins. Just 20 minutes after his last cigarette, Joe's elevated heart rate and blood pressure drop back to normal. After 8 hours, the toxic carbon monoxide levels in his blood drop by half, allowing oxygen levels to return to normal. Within 48 hours, his body is entirely nicotine-free, and his damaged nerve endings start to grow back, restoring his sense of taste and smell. As the weeks turn into months, Joe's body continues its deep, intensive repair work. Between 2 weeks and 3 months, his lung function increases by up to 30%, and his circulation improves dramatically, giving him a massive surge of everyday energy. By the 9th month, a wonderful event occurs. The tiny hair-like cilia inside his airways have completely regrown and are fully functional again, easily cleaning his lungs and cutting his risk of infection. After one single year of being completely smoke-free, Joe's risk of developing life-threatening heart disease is cut exactly in half. After 10 years, his risk of dying from lung cancer drops by 50%. Through patience and discipline, Joe has successfully rewritten his future. Today, Joe is healthy, full of vibrant life, and completely free from the heavy, suffocating chains of nicotine addiction. He can breathe deeply, his energy is back, and his body is clean. Smoking promised Joe a quick escape from daily stress, but in reality, it delivered silent, systematic physical destruction. Quitting was one of the hardest things Joe ever had to do, but the reward was the ultimate prize: his health and his future. If you are a smoker, let Joe's journey be your inspiration. It is never too late to put out that last cigarette and let your body begin to heal. The choice belongs entirely to you. Choose health, choose freedom, and don't let your beautiful life vanish in a cloud of smoke.